before we begin, my dears, tell me where you're watching from tonight. I love seeing our family gathered from every corner of the world. And if you enjoy stories wrapped in mystery, memory, and quiet truth, please like, subscribe, and share. It helps this little channel grow. Now, let's begin. He returned to my house just as the sky was turning blue, a silhouette standing in the cold, holding something against his chest. And when I opened the door, he lifted his hand, and I saw the letter. The same letter I buried beneath my mother's rosebush 14 years ago. My name is Ruth, and I've lived in this old farmhouse long enough to watch 3 winters take the color out of the porch railings. Most days are quiet, just coffee, the radio, and the steady hum of memories I don't speak about. But there's one memory I buried deep, literally and painfully, the last letter I wrote to someone I loved and lost. I thought the earth had swallowed it forever. I thought no one would ever see those words again. But at dawn that morning, a stranger proved me wrong. Chapter 1, the letter that should never return. The knock came just before dawn, soft, deliberate, and wrong. I wasn't expecting anyone. No one should visit at that hour, especially not on a morning when the world outside was frozen solid, wrapped in pale blue winter light. For a moment, I stayed perfectly still in my kitchen, fingers gripping the warm mug of tea I hadn't even tasted yet. 3 more knocks. Slow, steady, almost familiar. My heart began to pace. Not run, just pace, like it remembered something my mind didn't want to recall. I stepped toward the hallway window. The glass was fogged from the heat inside, but I wiped it with my sleeve and leaned close. And that's when I saw him. A man stood on my front porch, backlit by the soft crimson of the rising sun. His clothes were damp from frost. His hands were steady, his posture calm. But it wasn't his face or the lack of expression on it that froze my breath. It was what he was holding, a small, weathered envelope, old, yellowed, bent at the corners, a faint tear near the seal. My letter, the letter I buried years ago. I didn't even have to open the door to know it. The memory of that night, the shovel, the shaking hands, the cold dirt swallowing the envelope slammed into me like the door was already wide open. No one knew about that letter. No one was supposed to ever find it. That was the whole point of burying it. Yet here it was, back in the wrong hands, back at my door. The stranger lifted his eyes to the window as if he sensed me watching. Not aggressively, not with a threat, just knowing. He raised the letter slightly, like an offering, or a warning. My throat tightened. I forced myself to open the door. Cold air rushed in. Winter flooded over my bare feet. The man didn't step inside. He simply held the envelope toward me. "You dropped this," he said quietly. His voice was calm, too calm, a voice of someone who knew exactly what he was doing. I swallowed hard. Where did you get that?" He tilted his head, and for the first time I saw something unsettling in his eyes, like he was carrying a truth he didn't want to deliver. "I was told to bring it back to you," he answered. My chest tightened. Told by who? He hesitated, just for a second, but enough to make my stomach twist. Then he said a name I never expected to hear again, a name belonging to someone who was gone, someone who couldn't possibly be part of this, someone I hadn't spoken of aloud in years. He said, "You'd understand." The stranger added, he said, "It's time." The wind picked up behind him, scattering snow across the porch, and the world suddenly felt too small, too cold, too close. I stared at the letter, my buried past, in a stranger's hand, and just like that, dawn no longer felt like the beginning of a new day, but the opening of something I'd tried desperately to keep sealed forever. Chapter 2, The Dawn Visitor. The man didn't leave. Even after placing the envelope in my hand, he stayed there, still silent, like he was waiting for something. My breath fogged between us as the cold deepened, settling into the doorway like an unwelcome second guest. I clutched the letter, the old paper soft and fragile. It felt warmer than it should, almost alive, like the past it held wasn't sleeping anymore. Who told you to bring this? I asked again, more firmly this time. He didn't blink. I already said his name. I swallowed. Hard. You must be mistaken, I forced out. He's not. Alive, the stranger finished for me gently. I froze. His tone wasn't mocking. It wasn't cold. It was simply factual, like he already knew every fear swirling inside me. He looked past me, into my house, like he was searching for something unseen. Sometimes, he murmured, the dead aren't finished speaking. The words hit me like ice water. A gust of winter wind blew between us, carrying the faint scent of pine, and something else, something metallic. The man shivered, not violently, just enough to remind me he, too, was human. He rubbed one hand over his arm, then looked back at me. Do you know what this letter says? I shook my head. I never opened it. His brows pulled together. You buried something without reading it. My throat tightened. It wasn't written by him. A pause. Then who? He asked. I hesitated, not because I didn't know the answer, but because saying the name out loud still felt dangerous. Before I could respond, he spoke again. I don't think you understand, he said softly. Finding this letter, it wasn't an accident. I didn't just stumble across it. The back of my neck prickled. Then how? I was led to it. Led. I echoed. He nodded once. Slowly, like someone reliving a moment they couldn't explain. I had a dream, he said, 2 nights in a row. Someone called my name, told me to dig beneath the old birch tree, near the abandoned well. He paused, watching my reaction. A voice I didn't recognize. My heart nearly stopped. The birch tree, the abandoned well. That was the exact place where I buried the letter. He went on. At first I thought, he shook his head, almost laughing at himself. I thought it was just a strange dream. But the second night, the voice said your name. He looked at me meaningfully. Your full name. A tremor passed through me. My fingers tightened around the letter until the paper crackled. How do you even know who I am? I asked carefully. He pointed to the envelope. It's written inside. A cold pulse shot through me. Inside. But I've never opened it. No one should know. I didn't read it. He interrupted quietly. The voice told me not to. I stepped back. He stepped forward, not aggressively, but with the painful calm of someone walking through a memory that wasn't theirs. Then he said something that made my blood freeze. The voice said, he whispered, that the truth you buried will dig itself out one way or another. I shook my head. Stop, please. This isn't funny. I'm not joking. His eyes locked onto mine, sad, haunted, certain. You need to read the letter, he said. He insisted. I whispered. He nodded and said the same impossible name again. My knees weakened. No, I breathed, backing away. He's gone. But the stranger held up a hand, not to silence me, but to steady me. I thought you wouldn't believe me, he said quietly, so I brought something else. He reached into the pocket of his coat. My heartbeat hammered in my ears. He pulled out a small silver object, cold, familiar, and unmistakable in the dawn light. The locket, his locket, the one that vanished the same night he did. My vision blurred. My breath hitched. The house felt like it was tilting sideways. The stranger placed the locket in my palm. I found this, he said, buried right beside your letter. He paused, and I don't think that was a coincidence. The world spun around me, and all I could do was stare at the 2 pieces of my past, a letter I tried to forget, and a locket I never thought I'd see again. Now back in my shaking hands, the man stepped back into the snow, watching me with quiet understanding. His voice dropped to a whisper. "This isn't just a message," he said. "It's a warning." Chapter 3. The letter that should never have been found. The house felt too small for the storm inside me. I closed the door slowly, the click echoing like a final decision. The stranger remained outside, a shadow in the falling snow, waiting, watching like someone protecting a truth too heavy to hold alone. I carried the letter and locket to the kitchen table, the same table where my husband and I once had morning coffee, where we planned our future, where we dreamed of growing old together. Now it felt like a witness to something ancient and unfinished. I sat down, staring at the envelope. Its edges were worn, the paper yellowed, the handwriting smudged, but the moment my fingers touched it, memories burst open like a cracked dam. The night he disappeared, the phone that never rang, the car that never returned, the police who offered more theories than answers, and the letter buried under the birch tree. The one thing I swore I'd never open because of who wrote it. I ran my thumb along the seal. A tremor pulsed through my chest, not fear exactly, something deeper, something old. Before I could open it, a soft tapping came from the window. Not knocking, not wind, just tapping. Slow, rhythmic, insistent. I froze. The stranger was still outside, but he wasn't tapping. He was standing perfectly still, staring towards something behind my house. His head tilted slightly, like he was listening to a voice only he could hear. I opened the back door a crack and looked out. The birch tree was swaying, not wildly, not naturally, just enough to make its lowest branch scrape softly against the window, tap, 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 like crooked fingers begging to be heard. My breath caught. No wind would make a single branch move like that. I shut the door quickly and locked it. Back to the letter. Back to the one thing connecting all of this. I sat down again, hands shaking. My husband's locket lay beside the envelope, its silver surface glinting faintly in the kitchen light. I traced it with my thumb. Inside that locket was a picture of us on our wedding day, smiling like we knew the future was ours. I hadn't seen that photo in years. I opened the locket. Instead of the photo, there was paper, folded tight, stuffed inside. My stomach dropped. I hadn't put that paper there. Hands trembling, I pulled out the tiny scrap and unfolded it. Only 3 words were written on it. Do not trust. My pulse stopped. Don't trust who? The stranger? The letter? My memories? I looked back at the envelope, and that's when I saw something I hadn't noticed before. A second layer. The envelope was sealed twice, once originally, and once again, more recently. Who resealed it? My heart hammered against my ribs. I finally slid a finger under the flap and opened it. The smell of old paper rose into the air, musty, earthy, like soil and forgotten winters. Inside was a single page, but the handwriting wasn't from the person I feared. It wasn't from my husband. It wasn't from someone alive. It was shaky, unnatural, tilted downward, like the hand holding the pen had been trembling violently. One line stopped me cold. If anyone finds this, she must never be told the truth. Promise me. Me. Why would someone beg to hide the truth from me? Why would someone bury this letter? Why would someone reseal it? And why would my husband's locket, missing for years, be buried with it? I read further, each sentence twisted tighter around my heart. Something followed him that night. I heard it at the back door. He wasn't alone when he left. A chill spread beneath my skin. Not fear. Recognition. I had heard something that night, too. A sound I convinced myself was imagination. A sound I told the police didn't matter. But it did. It mattered more than anything. I tried to warn her. The letter said, but I didn't have time. Warn me? About what? I turned the page over. And there, pressed faintly into the paper, was a fingerprint. Dark, smudged, not human-sized. I dropped the letter as a cold shiver jolted through me. Outside, the birch tree groaned. The tapping grew louder. Tap, 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 almost impatient now, like something wanted inside. I backed away from the table, breath shaking, and through the front window, I saw the stranger finally move. He stepped toward the house, shoulders tense, eyes fixed on me like he knew exactly what I had read. He lifted a hand and pointed directly at the locket in my palm. Then, in a voice barely above the wind, his mouth formed a single sentence I couldn't hear, but I understood perfectly. It found you. Chapter 4. What Walks Before Sunrise. The stranger's words hung in the air like frost, even though he hadn't spoken them aloud. It found you. I didn't know how I knew that's what he meant, but I felt it. Deep, instinctive, like a memory waking up. He stood motionless in the snow, his breath rising in slow, foggy clouds. No threat in his posture, no anger, just concern. Fear even, but not fear of me. Fear for me. I backed away from the window, clutching the locket, so hard the metal dug into my palm. The house, once quiet, felt different now, like it wasn't empty, like something unseen had slipped inside the moment the letter was opened. The tapping behind the house stopped. The silence that followed was worse. A heavy, unnatural stillness filled the air, the kind that presses on your lungs as if waiting for you to breathe wrong. Then, a soft creak from the hallway, a step, slow, uneven, dragging. My pulse jumped. Who's there? I whispered, even though I wasn't sure I wanted an answer. The house didn't respond, only the faint sound of wood settling or something shifting its weight. I stepped backward until my hand found the kitchen counter. My fingers brushed the edge of a drawer, the one where my husband kept the simple things, pens, batteries, old receipts, and a flashlight. I opened the drawer, quietly grabbed the flashlight, and clicked it on. The beam cut through the shadows, narrow and shaky. I followed the sound to the hallway. Each step felt like walking deeper into a memory I wasn't ready to revisit. Halfway down the hall, my foot brushed something. I froze. The flashlight beam trembled as I lowered it and nearly dropped it. A footprint inside my house. Not wet, not muddy, but burned into the wooden floor, as if someone had stepped inside with a foot made of heat or ash. My throat tightened. Another step behind me, not from the hallway, from outside. I turned. The stranger had moved closer to the door. His hand hovered near the handle, but he didn't open it. He stood there, his chest rising in harsh breaths, eyes locked on something behind me, something he clearly saw, but I didn't. He mouthed another message. Don't turn around again. But I already had. The burned footprint wasn't alone. A trail of them led down the hall, past the living room, toward the back of the house, toward the birch tree, as if something had entered through the tree's shadow. My hands shook so hard the flashlight flickered. The burned footprints suddenly stopped, mid-step, as if whatever made them simply vanished into thin air, or changed shape. I swallowed hard, forcing myself to breathe. Then, from behind the bedroom door, a soft, fragile sound. A whisper, not words, more like syllables out of order, or someone trying to remember how to speak. My heart punched against my ribs. I lifted the flashlight and stepped toward the bedroom. The door creaked open slowly, revealing Nothing. Just my old room. The bed neatly made. The curtains gently swaying. The air cold, but still. I exhaled shakily. Until I saw the dresser. Until I saw what lay on top of it. My wedding ring. The original one. The one the police told me was never found. The one my husband wore the night he disappeared. I covered my mouth. The metal was hot, glowing faintly as if it had been held in a burning hand just moments before. I didn't want to touch it, but I had to. The moment my fingertips brushed the ring, a cold breath exhaled against the back of my neck. Human. Close. Too close. I spun around, flashlight trembling. No one. Just the dark hallway. I didn't realize I was crying until a tear dropped onto my hand. I wasn't scared of ghosts. I wasn't scared of shadows. I wasn't scared of the past. I was scared because everything happening felt familiar, like I had lived it before, like I had forgotten something important, something dangerous. I walked back to the kitchen, footsteps echoing loudly in the quiet house. The stranger was still outside, watching, helpless to come in. The letter still sat on the table, the words staring up at me. He wasn't alone when he left. I whispered, "What does that mean?" Then I noticed the back of the letter. Something written there. Faint, smudged, easily missed, like someone wrote it in a rush. I brought it closer to the light. For more words. Words that stole the air from my lungs. "It remembers you too." The room spun, and behind me, way down the hall, the tapping started again. But now it wasn't at the window. It was inside the house. Soft, deliberate, moving closer. Tap, tap, tap. And as it grew nearer, one thought whispered through my mind. This wasn't the first time something returned to my house at dawn. Chapter 5. The stranger finally speaks. The tapping grew louder, slow, patient, as if whatever moved through my hallway was learning the rhythm of the house, memorizing it, claiming it. I stepped backward until my hand found the fridge door. My breath came out in sharp clouds. The flashlight quivered so badly I had to grip it with both hands. Outside, the stranger seemed to sense the shift. He reached for the door handle again, hesitating, torn between fear and urgency. I mouthed through the window, "What is it?" He shook his head. Not a no, not a refusal, but a warning, as if telling me, if I say it, it becomes real. The tapping stopped. Silence flooded the house. Not gentle silence. The thick, suffocating kind that gathers in corners and listens. Then, a whisper, barely audible, a breath of sound forming my name. I froze. Only 2 people ever whispered my name that way. My husband and the person I buried that letter for. Suddenly, the stranger pushed the door open. He didn't enter, but he leaned inside just enough to let his voice slip through. "You need to come out. Right now." I shook my head, whispering sharply, "Tell me what's in my house." He exhaled shakily, as though he'd been holding his breath for far too long. "Not what?" he said softly. "Who?" My lungs tightened. He continued, "And it's not here to hurt you. Not yet. Not yet." The words cut through me like a blade dipped in ice. I whispered, "Why now? Why after all these years?" The stranger stepped fully into the doorway as the sun crept higher behind him, turning his silhouette into a dark, solid outline. "Because dawn is the only time it can walk," he said, "and it walks for unfinished promises." His eyes flicked behind me toward the burned footprints on my floor. I followed his gaze, feeling my heartbeat pulse in my ears. "Someone bound it to you," he said. "Someone who thought they were doing you a kindness." I shook my head hard. "No, that's not possible. I didn't ask for this. I didn't bind anything. I don't even understand what you're talking about." He stepped inside, just 1 foot, careful, as though crossing the threshold meant stepping into a memory. No, he said gently. You didn't bind it. He swallowed. But you called it. My stomach dropped. What do you mean I called it? He looked straight at me, and for the first time, his calm cracked, revealing exhaustion, fear, and something else. Grief. The night you buried that letter, he said, you begged someone to bring him home, even if it couldn't bring him back. No, I didn't. Except I did. I remembered the cold dirt, the shaking hands, the way I whispered into the night. Just let me know he didn't leave me on purpose. Just let me know the truth. I don't care how. I had meant it as a plea, a desperate prayer, a moment of weakness in the darkest hour of my life. I didn't know anything had heard me. The stranger continued. Some promises echo. Some grief opens doors. Some places remember. He pointed to the hallway. It's here because someone answered your call. Someone who loved him too much to watch you drown in the not knowing. My mind raced. Someone who loved him too much. Someone who wanted to protect me. Someone who, what does it want now? I whispered. The stranger's expression softened, but it didn't comfort me. It only made my skin crawl. It wants to finish what it started. He paused, then added, and it wants you to finally read the rest of that letter. I looked at the table where the envelope lay, the edges curled, the paper trembling faintly as if breathing. I already read it, I said, voice shaking. It said he wasn't alone when he left. The stranger stepped closer. That wasn't all, he said quietly. Old ink fades. Old truths hide. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out something wrapped in cloth. He unwrapped it slowly, reverently. My breath caught in my throat. It was the other half of the letter, burned on one side, charred around the edges, but unmistakably matching mine. He tore the letter in two. The stranger whispered. He tried to warn you. He tried to come back. But something else got to him first. I felt my knees weaken. I whispered, What happened to him? The stranger hesitated. A long, painful, heavy silence. Then, he didn't leave you. He swallowed. He never left the house. A cold wind swept through the doorway. Inside the hallway, the tapping started again, but this time it wasn't wandering. It was walking toward us. Chapter 6, The Promise Fulfilled. The tapping had grown into a rhythm I could no longer ignore, steady, deliberate, almost patient, like the house itself was holding its breath. I clutched the locket and the letters to my chest, heart hammering. The stranger remained at my side, silent, tense, like a shield between me and whatever waited in the shadows. Stay calm, he murmured, though his voice betrayed the same fear I felt. It's coming for answers, not for harm. Not yet. I didn't trust my shaking hands to open the door again, but I didn't need to. The house seemed to answer itself. A cold, unnatural wind swept through the hallway. Shadows stretched unnaturally, coiling along the walls. The burned footprints glowed faintly, trailing toward the birch tree just outside, as if the house itself had mapped the path. Then I heard it clearly, his voice, my husband's voice, not the one I remembered from warm nights and laughter, but the one from my deepest memory, tinged with urgency and fear. Ruth. I froze. The locket burned hotter in my palm. The letters trembled. The stranger's hand rested lightly on my shoulder. I can hear him. I whispered. The stranger nodded. It's the truth trying to reach you. You called it. Now you must answer. I stepped toward the hallway, letters clutched, locket burning like a pulse. Each step felt like walking through layers of memory. Each echo a whisper of the night. He disappeared. Then I saw him. Not alive. Not the man I married. Not fully human, but his essence flickering like candlelight in the cold winter morning. He wasn't here to haunt me. He was here to finish what had been left undone. The letter, he said, his voice carried across the hallway, soft but resolute. Read it all. There's no more hiding, no more secrets. Hands trembling, I opened the second half of the letter. His handwriting merged with the strange, trembling script I had seen before. It told the story of that night, the truth I hadn't known. Something had followed him home. Something bound to promises and grief. Something that had never left our house. It hadn't meant harm at first, but it had wanted acknowledgement. And only I could give it that. You, the letter said, must forgive what you cannot see. Only then will it rest. Only then will he. A shiver ran through me. The air thickened and the tapping ceased. Silence fell. Not the oppressive, heavy silence, but the calm of understanding. I spoke aloud, voice shaking but steady. I forgive you, and I accept the truth. The room seemed to exhale. The shadows softened. The glow around the burned footprints faded, leaving only the floor ordinary once again. The wind stilled, and for the first time in 14 years, I felt him close. Not gone, not lost, just at peace. The stranger stepped back, finally allowing himself a small, exhausted smile. It's done. For now. I clutched the letters and locket, tears sliding down my cheeks. Thank you, I whispered. But who are you? He shook his head. A friend. A messenger. Sometimes that's all one needs to be. Then, without another word, he turned and walked into the snow. My gaze followed him until he disappeared into the pale light of morning, leaving only footprints that vanished as if they'd never existed. I stood there, in the quiet house that now felt lighter, freer. I held the letters close. I held the locket close. And I realized that grief, like the snow, could settle, but it could also melt, slowly, painfully, and leave room for memory, love, and finally, peace. I placed the letters back on the table, locket beside them, and whispered to the empty room, goodbye, until we meet again. The birch tree outside swayed gently in the morning wind. The sun broke fully over the horizon. The tapping never returned, but somewhere deep in the corners of the house, or perhaps in the quiet spaces between heartbeats, I felt a presence watching, patient, and waiting. And I knew, with a quiet certainty, that some stories never truly end. Some promises echo forever. The end